Hey guys, welcome to another dual commentary. I have Clazzard alongside once again. This is going to be the losers match between Fantasy and Savior on Colloseum. Same map, I should say. We saw Savior and Light and Firebat here on. Fantasy looks like he's going to be starting in the bottom right-hand corner. In red, upper left-hand corner, we have Savior in orange, and we'll see how Savior does. He's just, I hate to say it, he just is not really playing well. And Fantasy, again, an X Factor, but even though getting out microed by Light, he still looked pretty solid, and he had a very creative build. And we'll see if he can pull it down here. I really worry though, because it's just really easy to hold expansions on this map for Terran players, and I worry about what kind of Savior can do here, especially in kind of the state he's been. Although I think Mutalisks are a little bit more effective on this map simply because of the way it's designed. But we'll see what he can do here, and it looks like he's going to send that Overlord the bottom left-hand corner to start out, so not going to be scouting perfectly there. Or I should say, not going to be scouting out Fantasy space initially there. But yeah, I don't think that'll affect him too much. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we can pull out here. Though I have to say I'm a little bit worried about Savior as a Savior fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Savior just having a torrid time of it right now. We saw a great, actually, Terran versus Zerg match on this map between Nada and Shark, and we saw Nada pull out some really great maneuvers. So it'll be interesting to see how Fantasy compares in contrast. Obviously, you can't contrast him to the great Nada. Yeah, I think I should probably take a moment here to explain my dislike of Firebat Hero, and it's not so much so because I'm a Savior fan. It's just because I'm a great believer in the spirit of StarCraft and having respect for your opponents, and I think that's something that it's all very well and good to celebrate and have ceremonies, but I think he goes to the point of mocking his opponents, and it goes beyond gamesmanship and, you know, good-natured rivalry, or even aggressive rivalry. It really does extend to kind of mocking your opponent. And I think Savior has earned his place at the table. I think Savior has been at the pinnacle of StarCraft gaming, and I think however much of a slump he's in, however he's playing, I think he deserves a little bit more respect than Firebat Hero has accorded to him. So that's the reason why, regardless of his skills and demonstrations as a player, I have very little respect for Firebat Zero, and wish him the greatest ill fortune as far as his StarCraft career is concerned. Anyway, so Savior putting on the hatchery first, and then spawning pool right afterward. Meanwhile, Fantasy putting down the racks at his choke. As I said, it'll be interesting to see how Savior copes on this map. It is going to be difficult for him. It looks like Fantasy is going straight away for the command center. So Fantasy fast expanding, one racks into CC, and Savior getting that drone in, so he might be able to actually scout this. And if he actually scouts this in time, that's going to be huge for him. So he's seen the racks. He's going to get up that ramp and scout straight away. So Savior's going to see that command center, and this is going to be huge because it's going to allow Savior to tailor his strategy accordingly. The question will be to see how he adapts, whether he decides to straight away put that third hatchery down, and looks like he might actually be doing that. He's setting a second drone out, and I think he might be ready to put that third hatchery down in that in that second expansion position. And this might actually work in Savior's favor because he actually scouted early with that drone, and I think he scouted expressly for the purpose of deciding whether or not it was safe to put that third hatchery down at that gas expo. And if Savior can get that going, he might find himself in a very strong position. Meanwhile, Fantasy is taking his extractor. He's got his racks up and running. Savior is good, and he's meanwhile walled off his base as well. So Savior's drone unfortunately blocked inside that base, as Fantasy has walled that off. So Savior getting the 3 hatchery build going now, and it's really just going to come down to execution, how well he can play. It's obviously going to be difficult for him to defend and hold both expansions, and he might find himself in a little bit of a position that he found himself in. And now Savior getting the Zerglings out, trying to stop the scout from coming. He's not going to be able to stop the scout from seeing that expansion, seeing his natural expo, but whether or not he can deny the scout on the other expo will be the critical factor for Savior. He really needs to deny that for as long as possible. But Savior might find himself in a little bit of a position similar to where he found himself in Game 1, being forced to defend at 2 positions without having the units he needs to do it.
I'm actually kind of curious how many Zerg players are going to be seeing shifting into, actually it doesn't look like we're going to see Savior doing it here, but into 3-hatch Zerglings, because this is the second time we saw Firebat Hero do this, and I think it's going to start being a pattern for Terran players going that fast expand and actually trying to put pressure, maybe either sealing off their front base or putting pressure. Savior very cleverly having that Zergling cliffside to get a spot out, factory going down. This is interesting, a factory going down for Fantasy, so it looks like he might be going for a bio build, either a bio build or he's just going to go straight science vessels. I'm going to assume he's going for more of a bio build here, simply because he's got that second gas secured, and that's really what you need for it. The question is will Savior get an Overlord over there in time to get the spot? At the moment, he's kind of relegated to it, putting in a 4th hatchery down, so it looks like he might be going for more a Hydralisk build as opposed to Mutalisk build. But yeah, as you can see, my guess is we're going to see 2 factories here as opposed to early science vessels, simply because you've got that 2 additional gas and we don't see any additional barracks being put down. But this is interesting. It'll be interesting to see how this will play out on this map. I don't know that siege, yeah, second factory going down. I don't know that siege tanks will be all that effective on this map, simply because they're going to be you have to siege cliffside. Although, and putting down 2 armory down simultaneously. This is insane. So he's basically going to go for a very quick mech build and just try to and simultaneously out upgrade Savior. And Savior in the meantime, it looks like, yeah, getting a creep colony down on his front door, teching to layer. He's going to go probably for a 4 hatchery Hydralisk build. Although he has 3 gas, he has a lot of options open to him as well. But this will be an interesting fight. I haven't seen a match like this in quite some time. It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, it looks like we're set up for a long drawn-out battle here, probably a long macro game between these two guys. Fantasy's got his machine shop building on his first factory. He's got a vulture out to harass. Savior has put the creep colony down in the middle at that choke, and he's got a sunken up, so he's going to be able to defend this, and that's going to be good for him. He's also got a sunken out at the second expo, so he's going to be in a decent position to defend this either way. That sunken not positioned well enough to defend all of the drones for Savior, so Savior is going to be forced to probably send a couple of zerglings in to try and push that vulture southwards towards that sunken. But cleverly, Fantasy actually managed to maneuver that vulture out against those zerglings, so Savior's going to pull those zerglings back. So decent play by Fantasy, but it's not going to bother Savior too much as long as his economy remains untouched. And it'll be interesting to see what tech route Savior shows. So the two armies, I think the longer this game goes on, obviously the more those 2 armies are going to favor Fantasy. Savior now getting the zerglings in, almost getting a surround on that vulture, not managing to trap that vulture. Just micro just isn't there. And again, great maneuvering by Fantasy, but he didn't manage to actually kill any zerglings there, I think. So Savior now getting the spire down, so he's not going for Hydralisk, he's going for a spire. He's going for a 3 gas spire, but I think this is clever by Savior, because what that's going to do is going to give him a little bit more map control, because I do think that the design on this map, without those big wide open spaces that you need, is going to be very difficult for Zerg to actually control the map. And I think with the Mutalisks, if he gets those Mutalisks out in time, he'll also be able to harass his opponent and keep those Goliaths back in Fantasy's base. Fantasy going for mass Goliaths, and if Savior can sort of do a GG play here and keep Fantasy back in his base with the Mutalisks while he continues to build up his own economy, he might be in a very, and that's an interesting style to say the least. Sunglasses, it reminds me of guys wearing sunglasses in strip clubs. Why would you want to do that? Anyway, or shades as they're called. So early turrets going up by Fantasy. He's obviously anticipating the spire from Savior, and looks like Savior is doing exactly that. So Fantasy, if he can get enough turrets and get a strong enough defense going that he can actually push out with those Goliaths, he might be able to put some pressure on Savior. But he's playing a very turtle-ish strategy here, and I think he might be playing a little bit into Savior's hands, because really he's allowed Savior to get that 3rd gas up, and there's no pressure at all for Savior. Savior now getting that third extractor down, so there's going to be no pressure on Savior. Actually managed to sneak a couple of zerglings in through that door, so he's seen the Goliaths, he's seen the factories, he's seen his opponent's build, and that is going to be absolutely critical for Savior. Savior, meanwhile, intercepting the SCV on the way with his zerglings as well, and now he's got his Mutalisk group out. Savior seeing that his opponent has walled up and gone for such a defensive and turtle-based strategy, Savior's had to take another expansion, putting that 4th hatchery down in one of the middle expansions of the map. Sorry, the 5th hatchery. So it's all going to come down to Savior's Mutalisk harass, which unfortunately hasn't been very effective of late.
Looks like it, yeah, I don't see anything happening at that base, first of all. I think he'd be better off just pulling those Mutalisks off to the north and making sure the 3rd expansion doesn't go down. In the meantime, he needs to he needs defilers out as quickly as possible. Needs to make sure he gets some sort of play, gets the Dark Swarm, because Dark Swarm absolutely devastating to Terran mech build. And it looks like he is bringing him to the northward position. He's going to try to go back and do as much damage in that location. He has seen the command center, so I think as long as it looks like he is going to just kind of park out there, as long as he can keep those Mutalisks at that additional expansion up to the north, I think he's going to be okay here. Just keeps basically, yeah, take over the map in the meantime, get your defilers up, get some Ultralisks out to deal with that mechanized unit, and in the meantime just play map control, make sure that he's not pushing out into you in the meantime until he gets a critical mass. Now, as you can see, wow, now Fantasy pushing out, going to take that northern area with those Goliaths. I'm surprised that the Zerglings weren't in position to kind of push on alongside with those Mutalisks. I think that would have been kind of the better option for Savior. Savior looks like he's going to go for the main, actually, sneak around backside and managed to pick off a single Goliath there, but going to be set back home. This is the problem, though, is if he did commit down there, I don't think he'd be able to get back across. Still has the Hydrals 10 back, and I still think, yeah, he needs to tech the hive as quickly as possible, secure more gas as quickly as possible, and he's in a really kind of in a hard position here. In the meantime, Fantasy, as you can see, getting that 3rd gas up, and as soon as he gets that 3rd gas up, he's going to be able to plop down. Wow, and he's still got those armories up. Keep in mind, I don't know what Savior's doing as far as upgrades, but he's going to have a hard time dealing with this, especially with that level 1 weapon, level 1 armor alongside. Savior is managing to get a little bit of harass here backside otherwise, but now being chased off. Used 1 sacrificial Mutalisk to draw the Goliath Goliath fire while getting a couple hits off there, basically taking 2 SCVs. I don't know if that was very cost effective or I guess intentional. Now he's getting the Queen's Nest down. He's got the 2 Evolution Chambers down as well. So, but I still think he's got to be behind as far as upgrades go, and you do not want to be behind in upgrades, especially not against mechanized units so powerful, so have a ton of hit points. And we'll see. He's got the Hydralisks out. Let's see if he decides if he can get the Lurkers out as well. Wow, another base spotted out, and we'll see if Fantasy decides to push on that base at what location is that? About the 8 o'clock location, I would say. Let's see if he goes with this Goliath group. I don't think Savior really has anything to contend with those Goliaths right now. He's Hydralisks can deal with can eat Goliaths pretty well, but honestly, I think they're out upgraded right now, and I think they're just a larger grouping at the moment. Savior did manage to take out a turret, but not able to do really anything else alongside there. And right now, he's also not doing a very good job of denying Fantasy Scout that the SCV is still wandering out there. It looks like Fantasy actually in the moment just content. Yeah, he's just content to stay in those 3 bases though and continue to kind of pump things up.
Yeah, Savior is in an interesting position. He's got that 5th expansion up and running. He's got the 4 gas running. He's got another expansion down at the 7 o'clock position. So he's got a good economy going. Looks like he's putting another expansion down at the 1 o'clock position. Really trying to play StarCraft by numbers here. Savior is just hoping that even if I think Savior feels that when Fantasy decides to push out with his massive mech force, he's not going to have enough in terms of defenses to actually hold off a ground-for-ground battle, and that's why he's deciding that even if he's forced to cede one of his expansions, he'll still be okay in terms of his economic advantage. But you can just see how a turtling Terran can just slowly build up units and expand, and slowly build up units and expand, and slowly build up units and expand. It's a really boring style of play, one that I really don't like. Savior now pushing up that ramp, trying to do some damage to that expansion, using the Hydralisks to support those Mutalisks, managed to pick up a couple of Goliaths, didn't really lose too much units himself. Looks like he has got some upgrades going. He's got Carapace at least level 1. He's also got melee range attack upgrade for his Hydralisks, as well as attack upgrade looks like for his Mutalisks. So Savior is really, I think he's reaping the benefits of having that early 3rd gas. That's what's allowing him to keep up in terms of his upgrades. Whereas even though Fantasy has got that 3rd gas up and going, Savior meanwhile has got 4 gases up and going. So Savior is going to be able to, I think, keep up in terms of upgrades. It's just a question of whether or not he's going to be able to keep his opponent's forces in check. He's now teching to Hive, and you can see why that tech to Hive has come so late. And I think Savior's made the right decision. I think the reason he's tech to Hive so late is because he wanted to get, he needed to invest gas in those upgrades. Another SCV going out to scout for Fantasy. Savior unable to stop it. He's probably going to intercept it at the midway point with his Mutalisks. He's continuing to produce mass Mutalisks here. It looks like he's going to be going for Guardians, and I think that's a great strategy on a map like this because of the maneuverability issue. He will have greater maneuverability. Fantasy doesn't have, and Fantasy now ready to move out. He's got a large force. I think the key for Saber has always been the fact that Fantasy didn't have enough units to push out and defend all of his expansions at the same time. And looks like now Fantasy feels he's ready. He's got a strong enough defense in place. And Fantasy now putting those vultures, sending those vultures out and planting spider mines all over the map. And now he's now going down for that expansion. This is going to be disastrous for Savior. These 4 vultures are going to kill about 20 drones. Savior has 3 Hydralisks popped just in the nick of time, and he's moving those drones away. I think he's moving them towards the expansion at the 8 o'clock position because he might have a sunken there. Savior's, but meanwhile he's laid spider mines all over the map to take out a lot of those Hydralisks. So he's done a decent amount of damage to Savior's Hydralisks with those 4 vultures. But crucially for Savior didn't take too much damage to his economy. Meanwhile, looks like Fantasy spotted out that expansion at the 1 o'clock position as well. So he's realized that Savior's spreading all over the map. He's using spider mine, brilliant by this has got to be a pin play by Fantasy, using spider mines, planting them cleverly to take out the larvae before they could pop at that 1 o'clock expansion. So Saber's going to be forced to send his Mutalisks over there to deal with that. Meanwhile, more marauding vultures for Fantasy. I personally don't think this is a great strategy. I think he's still playing a little bit into Saber's hands. This is needling, annoying play by Fantasy, but he really is ceding control of the map to Savior. He's really allowing Savior to play without too much pressure. Savior now getting that sunken up at that 8 o'clock expansion, allowing him to defend. Fantasy really needs to make some sort of push here, and looks like he might be ready to make that for the 8 o'clock position. But he really needs to make some sort of push and really put one of Saviour's bases under pressure, not just allow him to expand at will like this. He's now once again coming in. Savior with Burrow for his drones, so we're seeing some classic Savior here. He's got Burrow for his drones. He's got a sunken up. He's got Hydralisks defending everywhere. He's got a large ground force. Fantasy seems to be content to just maraud with vultures, but he's done no damage to Savior's economy thus far, and I'm not sure how effective this strategy is proving for him right now.
Yeah, it looks like he's just content to play this map control game to just kind of continue with the upgrades. He is winning upgrade-wise. He's got the level 2 weapons, he's got the level 2 damage. Those Mutalisks, I think, are more to pick off the tanks should they come. Basically try to use, I guess, a Lurker. I assume he's going to move to Lurker as soon as he gets Defilers. Kind of a Lurker-Hydralisk Ling combination. obviously to deal with the Goliath, and then underneath level 2 spine upgrade on the Hydralisk now to deal with the Goliath, and then use those Mutalisks alongside to try to deal with those Lings underneath. It looks like there's a stray mind underneath inside of Savior's base there. Science Vessel is now, so I think everything's in place. My guess he's going to attack that upper right hand corner, leave mines along backside just so Savior can't filter. I think that those vultures, even though they're marauding, they're not doing a ton of, it looks like they're actually doing a decent amount of economic damage here. I think they're more just to plant mines on the field, continue to keep Savior on his toes, make sure he can't just focus on his economy. Now, as you can see, a lot of those mules starting to push out, but he needs to be careful. I don't think he wants to engage that. First of all, there's that irradiating science vessel out there, and with a pack that big, could be absolutely devastating. But also a lot of Goliaths out there. I gotta assume their Charon booster upgraded, ready to deal with those mules as well. Now Fantasy's starting to push out. Looks like he's just going to do a punch at the main. Starting to push out. Looks like Savior has put it out with an Overlord there, end position speed upgraded, so he's not even going to lose that there. But now, yeah, Fantasy just going to do kind of a slow push here. He does have Defilers out though to deal with this. So and it looks like he's just going to rely on Hydralisk. I'm surprised he's not going with Lurkers. So just going to do a Hydralisk Mutalisk build here, and we'll see how that works out for him. He's also got level 1 weapons on the Zerglings and starting to move across map. Looks like he's going to go for a flank. Actually, no, looks like he's going to go to defend the 1 o'clock position, just anticipating Fantasy there. Had no spot there. That was really psychic right there, moving to the 1 o'clock and not giving up any position there. But that's a lot of siege tanks. Level 3 armor now, level 2 weapons. I got to assume level 3 weapons is on the way. I worry about this for Savior though, because he does have a lot of units on the ground, but upgrade-wise, looks like he has level 2 weapons on the Mutalisk, level 1 armor though, but a good amount of Hydralisk. But I still think Fantasy just mech. It's just really hard to deal with. So his micro is going to have to be impeccable to deal with this. In the meantime, he is going to be able to catch the 6 o'clock expansion and keep that from going up. So at least some sort of boon.
I think it's going to be down to the Guardians. I think when Savior gets Guardians, how effectively he uses them is going to play a huge role. Savior so far is able to defend. Now Fantasy is finally switching to being slightly the aggressor. Savior's got a big massive group of Mutalisks, and it looks like he's just focusing that command center down with those Mutalisks, and he almost manages to take the command center. I think he would have been better off killing lots of SCVs and forcing his opponent to produce a lot more SCVs, but he decided to try and take the command center. Unfortunately for him, it didn't pay off. He's managed to catch a couple of siege tanks out of position though with those Hydralisks, and he's going to be able to take out at least one of those siege tanks, and it looks like he might actually even be able to take a second siege tank down. Actually, that second siege tank is just about going to survive. But Savior continuing, I think this is the advantage. Savior actually managed to get a Defiler right into one of the expansions of his opponent here. He's also got a massive group of Mutalisks. Irradiated has gone off, but Savior's managed to move that Irradiated Mutalist out. He's got a Defiler there, so he's got a Plague Officer. He's actually forced that command center to be lifted. So he's forcing Fantasy lift that command center, and now it's Fantasy's units out of position down at that 7 o'clock expansion. Fantasy looks like he's decided to trade expansion for expansion. I don't think that's a good idea for Fantasy. So Savior's taking that command center out. He's going to pick up this barracks as well. So Fantasy in trouble here, because I don't think Savior's going to mind losing this expansion down at the 8 o'clock position, even if he loses a lot of drones here, because he's got loads of expansions all over the map. Fantasy just allowed him to expand it well. Meanwhile, Savior looks like he's going to take another expansion. He's now taking that second expansion, the expansion just up the ramp. Fantasy just not having enough units to defend it and push out, and that was always going to be Fantasy's problem. Savior killing all the units. And meanwhile, he's using the Hydralisk to do damage to Fantasy's economy, while he uses the Mutalisk to keep his opponent's forces at bay. Now Science Vessel coming up for Fantasy, but meanwhile, Savior looks like he's deciding once again to focus on the command center, and I don't know how great an idea that is. Fantasy repairing it with about 8 SCVs, that's going to kill off. So Savior's Mutalisk taking another amount of damage. So Savior managed to, again, Savior's micro has been excellent in this game. He's really separating these Mutalists out as soon as they get irradiated. But that was, I think trade for trade, blow for blow, I think Savior's got the advantage there. Savior's now got his Ultralisk out. He's got a massive force, a ground force moving across the RAN. He's picked off a lot of his opponent's forces, and now Fantasy's in a little bit of trouble. So Savior getting those Hydralisks in range. He's losing a lot of the Hydralisks without having any Plague or Swarm to really defend them. He really needed to get a Defiler up with that force, and this seems like a suicide maneuver. Savior just barreling into Fantasy's ground forces, and Fantasy's defense holds, and Savior wastes that attack. Savior's Defiler only now arriving, getting a swarm up, but that swarm is nowhere near being where it needs to be, and Savior's attack fails. And I think Savior might just have thrown this game away. He had the advantage after that last attack that he did, but he just sent all of his ground forces straight down the mount, not hoping that Fantasy would have nothing left, but Fantasy and Savior continue to pump out massive amounts of units. He's clearly built up a good resource lead. The question is, how long is his resource lead going to last? Savior's lost 2 expansions. He took out one of his opponent's expansions, but I think he could have let himself be in a much stronger position had he just been a little bit more patient with that attack. Looks like he's going to try and retake those expansions down at the 7 and 8 o'clock positions. Meanwhile, Fantasy pushing out towards the 1 o'clock expansion, and Savior might be losing this. And Fantasy has got a couple of spider mines and vultures on the way. Savior trying to send a couple of zerglings to try and do that. So he was just seeing constant action and battles all over the map, and it's just going to be down to which player can multitask better and overall micro control better. Looks like Fantasy's going to push out and take that expansion. Savior, meanwhile, focusing on this expansion down just to the west of Fantasy's main, and this is just an absolutely insane game of StarCraft.
Wow, those mines really doing their lost 6 Ultralists there, mostly to mines, and that's where those vultures are really playing their weight in 75 minerals, so imbalanced, just 75 minerals for that. The big Ultralist killer there, not so much the tanks, not so much the Goliaths, those mines planted out in the field for Fantasy. In the meantime, though, it looks like he's starting to he's retaking the economic lead. Wow, but Savior, this is just a huge economic back and forth battle, though. Fantasy doing damage to expansion, Savior going in trying to do damage alongside, and Savior, I'd say he has a superior mobility and now cutting some reinforcements back from the north. It looks like he's going to cut them off before they can come back. But I think Savior's in a little bit of advantage there because he is Zerg. He can expand a lot faster, in my opinion, than Fantasy can. Fantasy, in the meantime, is holding though, but he's still lost. He's lost his natural expansion, as you can see, to the west of his main, and also it looks like he's just managed to barely hold on to the north. I got to assume that his main is completely mined out. So now he's in a really gas-heavy, really mineral-heavy build, and he's only got one producing expansion. If Savior can hold on and continue to produce and just keep the units up, keep the pressure on, I think he will come down with this game.
Yeah, Savior, it's a real seesaw battle. It's hard to say who's in front. It looks like he's managed to get another command center down at that expansion just west of it. That expansion is mined out. His natural expo is mined out. His main is mined out because he's been playing with fewer number of expansions. Because that's the other advantage that Zerg players have, that they take longer to mine out their minerals than say a Terran player, because they have so many more expansions and their drones spread out over more expansions. That does give Zerg a slight advantage in that respect. But this game really hanging in the balance, and I think one critical maneuver from either player here will clinch it. But Savior so far has been able to go toe-to-toe, but he has lost a lot of expansions. Fantasy has killed 4 expansions of Savior. Savior's killed 2 expansions of Fantasy, and this game really in the balance. But you can see that Savior's struggling a little bit because he doesn't have a lot of ground units right now. He's been forced to build a lot more drones and put an expansion. Now, if he can get another expansion up, say at the 1 o'clock position again, he would be in a much stronger position. Savior trying to sneak in those hard lists and do some harass on that expansion at the roughly 6 o'clock position. Fantasy managed to get his defense down in defense. So Fantasy going once again into turtle mode, not having enough resources to defend at both fronts. Savior, if he had a large group of mutalisks, would be able to harass at multiple fronts. Looks like the spider mines are finally cleaned out. He's got another couple of ultras going in and planting more spider mines out to intercept those Ultralisks. Savior looks like he's ready for another attack, this time going for the north. So Savior brilliantly anticipating. Savior's anticipation has been second to none in this game. He's really anticipating well. He's intercepted that command center, and he actually might be able to take this command center down. Fantasy just doesn't have the forces on the ground to be able to defend everything, and Savior's got a Defiler there as well. Savior picks off the command center. That's going to be critical. How much is that going to cost Fantasy? Savior picking off that command center, not committing his forces to going up that ramp after that expansion, but killing that command center is just going to be so costly. Meanwhile, Fantasy's forces have been pulled back. Savior coming in with a Hydralisk and with the Mutalisk. He's using a couple of Scourges to spot as well. Those Hydralisks are out of range of the in-play siege tanks, and if he can get in range of this expansion, and if he can take this command center down, that's going to hurt Fantasy a lot. But I don't think he's got enough in terms of forces to actually take that command center down. Fantasy coming in with the Science Vessel, just casting an Irradiate. Savior does have an Ultralisk. He's trying to draw those spider mines towards the siege tanks. Savior kills the command center. I cannot believe Savior's managed to kill that command center. Savior send in a ninja stealth task force to take out that command center. Meanwhile, Fantasy's gotten 3 vultures down towards that expansion at the 7 o'clock position. This could hurt Savior a lot here if he's not aware and awake. He's sending the lurkers, the Hydra's in first, but that was brilliant. Savior sent in a commando task force of Zerg units and picked off that expansion just outside the umbrella of Fantasy's defense. Brilliance, absolute brilliance by Savior. That was a great maneuver, and I think that one maneuver might be what wins him the game in the end, because Fantasy's economy is in absolute tatters right now. He's down to the 1 mineral only, and he's lost 2 command centers, so he's in huge trouble here.
One of the big problems with Terran mech is it's just not very mobile. You have to move it. Like Medic Marines, you can move across the field. They're cheap. You can hold with a lot of bases a lot more often, but not so much. Wow, Defiler getting radiated out in the field there. But now Savior, I think he's in a really good position. Fantasy, though, as you can see, being very intelligent, realizing if I'm going to stay in this game, I need to do some economic damage of his own. He's going up to the upper right-hand corner. Problem is I think if he does this, he's going to be caught out of position. As you can see, there's a lot of Ultralists here alongside. Wow, that was kind of a weird view. Now switching to the first person from Fantasy's view. As you can see, Fantasy has a couple tanks there in the background, but wow, actually plaguing his own Ultralisks there, does manage to get a large grouping of those tanks as well as Goliath. And this is where you can see the weakness of Terran Mech, is those Defilers getting that Dark Swarm down as well as Plague pushing in, and now he just doesn't have the units or the economy to replenish. This is going to be the last hurrah. As soon as he loses that group of mech unit, he just does not have the economy to really replace it. And additionally, I don't think he has enough to defend his main. I think as you can see these Hydralisks coming around the side, I think he is going to be able to get a nice shot at the main here as he's losing. Even if he loses the upper right-hand expansion, he still has the expansions at that 9 o'clock position. Even though I think that's the last, basically that's the last group of units for Fantasy. I think after he loses that, he's going to have to GG. And these Hydralisks in the meantime, as well as Ultralisks pulling around underneath. Actually, it looks like they're going to go for a flanking maneuver. I'm surprised that Savior's not making a gun for the main here. And Plague going off all over those units. Ooh, that hurts. Ouch. Yeah, and I think that's going to be it for there. And I think that we're going to see GG in just a second here. I don't think Fantasy really has any fight left in him.
Yeah, Savior, with some excellent plays, managed to get those transfers out. Fantasy switching to siege tanks and vultures. Obviously, he doesn't have a lot of resources to produce a lot of siege tanks, so he's going to have to buy himself time with those vultures here. But Savior is still in a very strong position, maneuvering those Hydralisks excellently, using those speed upgraded overlords with range, with sight range, I think probably as well, but I'm not sure of that, to actually see those spider mines and kill them. And Fantasy is not going to be able to do a lot of damage here. And that's again, Savior's used all of his race's advantages to the maximum potential here, getting those extra expansions in when he had the opportunity to do so. Massive vultures group coming down. Savior's only got a couple of drones to block that. And brilliant by Savior, he's burrowed those drones, but unfortunately but Fantasy does have the scout off, so he's actually going to do massive damage to Savior's economy here. Savior's got a lone Hydralisk there. That's not going to do much against all of these vultures. So Savior, despite his burrow drones, is going to lose about 20 drones here, and that's going to hurt his economy a lot. He's bringing some Hydralisks back to try and retake this expansion, try and save some of those drones, but he's lost all of the drones here. I think Fantasy will take this trade, even if he loses those vultures. He's killed all of Savior's drones at that 8 o'clock position. I don't think Savior will mind terribly because he'll be able to rebuild quickly enough, but Fantasy's just bought himself a little bit of a breathing room. You do feel that this game is too far gone for Fantasy to retake it now, and Savior, I think he should have left a couple of Hydralisks to block that ramp out. He's allowed those 2 vultures to escape, and this time he's coming in with an irradiating his own science force to try and take those drones out. Another burrow from Savior, and I think Savior's going to lose a lot of these drones as well. Unfortunate for Savior. Great play by Fantasy, doing excellent harass on Savior's economy, realizing that's his only hope in the game. But I think at this stage it's a little too late. He's not just going to have enough, even if he continues to do some damage to Savior's economy. I think Savior's got enough in the tank left over. Another vulture getting in on Savior's natural expo, hitting the drones there, and Savior's sunken, not in range, not positioned well enough to actually defend that mineral line. Savior reproducing is going to be forced to use some larvae to produce drones, but I don't think he's going to mind too much. Fantasy has finally got another expansion mining, so he's bought himself a little bit of time to get that expansion up, and that's his last hope. If Savior can somehow find the resources and units to take that expansion down, I think that's going to be GG right there. So Fantasy at the very edge, standing at the brink of the precipice, and I'm not sure if he's going to be able to come back from it. I have a feeling he's going to fall over. Savior has scouted that expansion going back up, and I think he's ready to make his assault on it very soon.
I got to give props to Fantasy here. Really fighting well. I think he's got those vultures. Only minerals here, putting out and just going in and harassing Savior's economy here. Even though Savior obviously has mining out of 3 bases here versus Fantasy's just 1, and I think that's a mineral only. Still has a little bit of gas along the side as well as the depleted Vespian gas producing for him, but just not enough to really keep a large mechanized group. Really turtling now. It looks like he's got the full weapon. Actually, only at level 2 weapons in the meantime. As you can see, a lot of these factories just not producing. I think it looks about 3 of them now producing as opposed to basically all of them. But in the meantime doing an excellent job keeping Savior on the defensive, just trying to destroy the economy where he can and try to somehow get back in this game. I just don't think it's going to happen though. Savior just taking his time now, massing up, and in a minute he's just going to be able to just pound on that expansion. I don't think Fantasy's really going to have the troops to deal with it, and I wouldn't be surprised if Savior goes alongside with the drop. Science Vessels going down to those scourges you can see alongside. And now, yeah, no Goliath out in the field. I would expect a Mutalisk or 2 alongside here in just a minute from Savior, because as you can see there's nothing out in the field. It looks like a single Goliath to deal with Mutalisks here, but Fantasy putting up a nice cliffside defense here alongside, but the Ultralisk getting in there now as well, so I think this is going to be it. I'm surprised that Fantasy hasn't GG'd at this point. I gotta give him props for fighting it out here, but it just takes a couple Mutalisks here at this point for Savior, and there's nothing that Fantasy's going to be able to do.
Yeah, Fantasy's played an excellent game in terms of using his vultures and using those spider mines to maximum effect. That's really been his strength and the key to keeping him in the game this long. But I think largely he has been the architect of his own destruction. His strategy to turtle right from the start, not put any pressure on Savior whatsoever. I mean, he allowed Savior to have 3 gas without a contest. He allowed Savior to have 4 gas without a contest. And you really, even Savior, the way he's playing right now, any Zerg, you just can't give a Zerg 4 gas without contest and expect to win out. Scan going off from Fantasy, trying to pick off some more drones. He's managed to kill off about 3 or 4 drones with those vultures, luring those Hydralists into those spider mines. Savior's got a couple of... it looks like he actually managed to get a spider mine into that drone line and kill a lot of the drones, but Savior's now switched to Mutalisk, as you were predicting he was going to. He's got a massive group of Mutalisks there. Fantasy's got 1 Goliath, so that Goliath's going to die. Then the Science Forces are going to die. He managed to get a couple of Irradiates off actually on a couple of the Mutalisks. That's not going to bother Savior too much. But the Goliaths are dead. Now the Siege Tanks will die, and then Fantasy will die. So bye-bye Fantasy. That's the end of his Fantasy in this tournament. And he's unfortunately going to be going out. Saviour's going to have another chance. He's going to have a chance up against Light, who I'm not sure is that strong versus Zerg players. So Savior might have a chance of going through to the next round, and if it would be a great escape for him. But now he's just polishing off Fantasy's units at ease with that massive Mutalisk force, as Diggity predicted very insightfully, and Savior obviously thinking along the same lines. So Mutalisk from Savior, now he's in that mineral line undefended, and it's just turkey season for those Mutalisks on those SCVs. Couple of Goliaths coming out from Fantasy, but it's not going to be enough.
And yeah, Crackling's coming alongside just to clean it up. That's not a good sign when you have your last 2 siege tanks with Dark Swarm just hanging over them. And now, yeah, he's got a GG at this point. I have to give him... I say it's impressive because he fought well to the end there. I think he gave Savior a really good fight, and honestly, it'll be interesting to see the final matchup, simply because I don't think Light is any pushover, and still not GGing. He's just going to wait for that command center to burn down. Now he's not mining at all. Down to his last Goliath, going to fight to that last to the last moment. Just going to make it come down to Zerglings, it looks like. I like Fantasy's fight. I like the fact that he's clinging on. He's going to fight to the very last in this MSL, because it is the MSL. Really showing respect to the competition here. Still going in with Harass. Is really doing everything he can to just cling into it. But the game, yeah, at this point, it's just too far gone. Just trying to show, I guess, a little bit of respect here at the moment here. But yeah, it'll be interesting in the final game. Light is no pushover. I think he's competent enough against Zerg to really pull one down. Do you know what map it's going to be on?
I don't actually. We'll have to check that. But I think regardless of the map, I think you're giving too much credit to Fantasy. I think yes, he fought well, but he really was the architect of his own destruction, just allowing Savior to expand at will all over the map, ceding map control to a player of Savior's caliber, even in the form that he's right now. I think is fatal and near suicidal, and Fantasy paying yeah, exactly. And he's I mean, 4 gas for a Zerg, and that's really what allowed Savior to stay in the game. But I suppose that's the choice you make if you decide to turtle as a Terran on this map and not pressure the opponent, and that's the choice you make. But he also obviously chose to go for the mech build, turtle and mech. Whereas if he was going to turtle, I think going for a bio build would have been so much more effective, because he would have had that extra maneuverability, and he would have been able to send out groups of medic and marines to raid his opponent, and Savior would have had a much tougher time defending all of those expansions that he was spreading across the map, and I think that would have allowed Fantasy to come in and take the game ultimately. But those were the choices he made, and you live or die by your choices, and unfortunately for Fantasy, he's sunk with them. So GG, well played by Savior. It was a good game of StarCraft, not as epic because both players did make some mistakes, but encouraging signs for Savior fans. He's clearly not at his peak. He may never be, but he's not down and out yet. Thanks for listening, guys. This is Clazard and Diggity.
Thanks for listening. Moving on to game 1, or final game, I should say. Thanks, guys.